right, welcome back to the TCI studio. We're going to do this week's edition of Tuesday Tiger Talk and go through some of the things we heard in press conferences today, press conferences yesterday. Gavin, I guess let's start with you. I know you wrote a story yesterday on Coach Elliott. He got some questions about Chad Morris, and those questions kind of morphed into some other things about potential coaching opportunities.
Yeah. He was asked if the situation at Chad Morris, similar to the situation at Florida State with Willie Taggart, where both coaches were fired less than 2 full seasons into their tenures there at their respective schools. And Elliott was asked if that would impact his thought process if he were to get an opportunity to be a head coach somewhere else, knowing that these days, seemingly, it seems like a lot of these schools have short leashes for these coaches. So Elliott was asked if that would impact his thought process. He said, you know what, not really. He said for him, his thought process is more faith-driven than anything else. He feels like he's going to pay more attention to what the Spirit's leading him to call. Like if the Spirit's calling him to take a head coach job, then that's what he's going to do. If the Spirit's calling him to stay at Clemson, that's what he's going to do. That's what he said. He really operates based on faith and doesn't look at what's going on the outside world. And that kind of led into, then I actually spoke with him for a couple of minutes after that and asked him what it would take for another program to be able to pull him away from Clemson. He said, you know what, I don't really think about that a whole lot in season. He's going to kind of ponder that more in the off season. But one thing that was important to him is it's important to him for him to see that a program is on the same page, or a university is on the same page, from the president to the athletic director to the head coach, from all levels down. It's important to him to see that the program's all on the same page, and that the university is capable of building not just a good team, but a good program, because good programs consistently produce good teams. So that's something that's important to him if he gets another opportunity elsewhere. And then I also asked him if he aspires to be a head coach one day, and he said, you know what, some days I do, some days I don't, and so we'll see. But he said basically just he's not thinking about it a whole lot right now, and he's going to think about it more in the off season. But if the time does come and he gets another opportunity somewhere else, he's going to operate based on faith more than anything.
Well, and things have changed the last few years, and one of the things that changed it was the early signing period. Now, a lot of these programs, if you're thinking about making a coaching change, they're doing it a little bit earlier because they want to try to get the new staff in place to see if they can salvage something by, December 19th or 20th or whatever the early signing period is that year. I know Dabo was asked about it yesterday as well, and Dabo went and talked about, gosh, I'm certainly glad that Clemson didn't get rid of me in year 2. And if you remember, year 2 was a year where Clemson struggled a little bit, and Dabo talked about that's the year where he saw himself turn the corner. But he said, hey, if they looked at my record at after 21 games or whatever they looked at for him, he said, my record wouldn't have looked that great either. So definitely a difference. Yep. We've had kind of a parade of players come through the last couple of days. A lot of those have been the seniors that'll be running down the hill for the final time this week. Today we had Cervinka and we had Ankrum, 2 of the offensive linemen that have been there forever. Dabo mentioned in the press conference about Tremaine. He said, yeah, he's kind of like Eric McLean, and he might be after one of y'all's jobs at some point. And we asked Tremaine about that today, and he said, he thought that was obviously, a really nice thing for Sweeney to say, because he's got a lot of respect for what Eric's done and what he's doing now on the new ACC network. And he did say that he wanted to, maybe look to go into sports after his playing days are over. And somebody asked him, like, well, when you were a freshman, you said you wanted to be a weather forecaster. And he's like, well, if ESPN would let me do both. And somebody asked him, well, what's your forecast for today? And he said rain. So he's already a lot more accurate than a lot of the weather people out there. So
he's a great communicator and a great speaker. He's certainly built for a job like that, for sure. And Dabo said he's the modern day Eric McLean. That's the way Dabo put it. Which is funny.
You got to listen to Davis Allen, one of the freshmen that talked today. What are some things you heard from Davis?
He just talked a lot about how I asked him if playing linebacker has helped him in his transition to being a full-time tight end. He said there's a lot of skills that playing the linebacker position has helped him out. Playing tight end, especially with physicality, is one of the things he mentioned. He talked about a number of topics, how his relationship with Brandon Spector, coming from Calhoun, playing with him there, and now they're both at Clemson, have a really good relationship. He's built a good relationship with Jalen Lay, and he's learned a lot from Braden Galloway. And one thing I asked him is, somebody you may not know, his dad actually played football at Georgia. And so I asked him if his dad's now a Clemson fan. He's like, oh yeah, my dad's all in now. And
Cool.
they come to all the games, and so his dad's a big Tiger fan now. But we'll have more on Davis later in the week. But he just touched on a number of topics. He's a really great kid. He's already playing a lot more than maybe some would have expected this year, and he's got in on a couple of receptions and blocked well, and he's done a good job so far.
One of the more comical moments at today's press conference Dabo had was he was talking about Lamar Alexander. And you know how Dabo is. He starts on one topic and he morphs it into something else. And he was talking about how he's actually been able to talk to him a few times when Deshaun or other players are around. He went off on this FaceTime rant. He's like, man, everybody walks around with FaceTime and they're like, oh, hey, so-and-so, and they got so-and-so on the phone. And he made kind of a comical thing. We'll have that video up on the website. But that was kind of funny listening to him talk about Lamar Alexander. Of course, he had tons of praise for him. He was talking about, Deshaun and Lamar and how they're both doing so well in the NFL now, and kind of went through a funny little story there. One of the things you wrote about today, Dabo also went in depth, and we had the stuff on our website. We'll get that up a few days ago when Coach Sweeney was presented the All-State Award from Deshaun, and Dabo went down a little bit of history on how that unfolded.
Yeah, so Dabo was presented with the honor. He was selected as an honorary coach for the All-State AFCA Good Works team, and he was nominated for it back in September, I believe, and he knew about that, but he didn't really know there was an award for coaches, I guess, is what he said. But so Deshaun calls him up on Tuesday. He said, "Hey, Coach, what you got going on? What do you got going on tomorrow?" And Dabo's just like, "Oh, well, we just got practice, the usual." And Deshaun goes, "Well, I think I want to stop by and want you to meet my girlfriend." And so Dabo's like, "Yeah, that's cool. Come on by. And what time you think you're gonna be here?" And he was like, "Oh, around 2." And Dabo was like, "Well, great. That's awesome. We'll have you speak to the team." And so all the while, Deshaun was planning to surprise him with this Good Works selection, and Dabo just had no clue. He just thought Deshaun wanted to come by and speak to the team a little bit, and so he introduces Deshaun to the team. Deshaun says a few words, and then Deshaun says, "Oh, well, Coach, I'm really here to present you with this award." So, and Dabo was just stunned. He was really excited and happy he was just really surprised. It was a cool moment for both of them, and that was cool. Dabo telling that story today.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Deshaun had stopped by on his way to vacation during his off week. He took time to come by Clemson and do that.
Yeah.
So that tells you a lot about the relationship those two have.
And Deshaun's an All-State selection, Good Works selection himself, so it was pretty cool. He's alumni for that. So.
Yep, so that's a great relationship those guys have. A couple final things. Gage Cervenka was up there today, and he was asked about Simpson's run, and he made some jokes about, he was out of breath. He only ran 2 yards for the touchdown, and so he had a little ribbon going on there. But I guess the final thing was it was one of the shortest Dabo Sweeney press conferences we have had. I don't know if that tells you something about where the team is this week, but it was just a little over 30 minutes. I think it was 32 minutes or something like that. So I think the team is very, very comfortable going into the Wake Forest.
Yeah, it's usually Dabo breaks off on these long rants and tangents, and he's like 5 minutes per question and whatever, but there was a bunch of questions that only added up to 32 minutes today. So we'll see what that means, but I think they're all locked in and ready to go. They've been on a roll, and I think Wake Forest is in for another tough game this weekend.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this week's edition of Tuesday Tiger Talk. Stay tuned to TCI all week long. We got everything covered for you with the new committee rankings coming out. And as Clemson heads down the stretch run here, stay tuned to TCI for the most complete coverage of Clemson football.